Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Wednesday webinar of UK Policing, and we're going to look at Centre of Excellence today, and we'll do some introductions in a second. Just a couple of rules on the webinar. So you've joined a Teams live event, which is hosted by Reusable. Today's webinar is going to be recorded and will be available through our YouTube channel afterwards, and we'll also provide some of the links potentially as well to anybody that's registered as to how they can also maybe download the recording outside of the YouTube channel as well. We should, in theory, have some time for questions towards the end, and because it's a live meeting, you can post your questions as you go through the live meeting or obviously at the end as well, and we should be able to see those as they come through. Because it's a live meeting, we can't sort of verbally or you can't verbally ask a question as such. So if you do have any queries, questions as we go through, please post those in the Q&A chat window, which should, if you're connected via Teams and you've got the Teams client in particular or through the web version, you should have like a little banner down the left hand side, which is the Q&A window that you can ask a question through. Obviously, if you've got any questions that you can think of after the webinar, please feel free to get in touch with us. And if you do lose connection, again, because it's a live event, if you just re-click the link again to reconnect, you should be able to get back on. And you can also go fast forward, sorry, let me rephrase, probably rewind actually, because it's live. So you can go back to the point where you maybe lost your connection and kind of listen in from that point onwards as well. You can kind of choose where you want to listen to and from as well. And with that, I'll pass over to Caroline, who will say hello and a little bit of an introduction about Reusable.
Hello. So for those that don't know me, so I'm Caroline Suter. So I'm one of the account directors here at Reusable and also UK police lead. So I pretty much look after all of the police forces across the UK here at Reusable. So for those who don't know us that well, so Reusable, we're a UK-based organisation based out of Stafford, which is where our headquarters are, and we have employees based pretty much across the entire UK. We are a Microsoft Gold Partner and an Azure Expert MSP, so we are pretty proud of the accreditations that we have across Microsoft, and we pretty much only deliver Microsoft solutions. So we have a number of accreditations across a number of workflows within Microsoft. As I said, we're a Microsoft Gold partner for many of those across the 15 categories. We've been we're 15 years in the industry, so we pretty much do professional services, managed services, and we predominantly work probably about 70% across public sector, and we also have quite a strong presence within the commercial sector as well. But as I said, a lot of the work that we do is pretty much public sector orientated. Ian, do you want to move on to the next slide? We focus our business predominantly around cloud transformation, business transformation, and digital transformation. So we really help customers on their journey through those three stacks, predominantly across advisory services, and then obviously the consultant services, and then, as I said, across the support services. We also have a skills division, so this is mainly our education department, where we really help organisations with that, with that training, with that skills development, and also through the apprenticeship scheme that we run through Reusable Education as well. Can you move on to the next slide, Ian? So just focusing predominantly on police, obviously, which is where I come from in all of this. So Reusable have a long history of working within the police sector, and we've worked with pretty much every single force across the police sector over the last 15 years. We are really closely aligned with the Microsoft policing team. So I don't know if any of the attendees on this call work closely with those teams, but we regularly have engagements with Ross and Clint, and then also across the services division as well within the police team. So we're really closely aligned. We have joint plans. We have joint engagements, and we work side by side with the Microsoft policing team. So, you know, pretty much what your Microsoft policing team will be talking to you about is what we'll be talking to you guys about as well. Some of the key engagements that we have across the police sector. So we've worked really closely with a lot of forces to deploy the NEP blueprints, both for Office 365 and lately with the Azure landing zones. We've worked with some of the pilot forces as well across both Office 365 and the Azure landing zones. And we've also worked direct with the NEP to be able to feed back you know, the engagements that we've had with those forces as well. So we do have very close alignment with the NEP. All of our services are aligned to the digital policing strategy. So we've worked, we've put a lot of effort over the last 12 months to make sure that our services and our solutions reflect exactly what the digital policing strategy is set out to deliver across the police sector over the next few years. And we've been really proud of some of the really strategic key contracts that we've won over the last 6 months. Predominantly, you know, it's obviously within the public domain. We can talk about the contract that we won with Warwickshire Police for the managed service, and also lately with the Police ICT company, which are obviously now Police Digital Service. So, you know, we're really looking to align the services that we deliver to, you know, some really key organisations within the police sector to help and support the delivery of the police digital strategy, to make sure that, you know, we're either working with you direct or working through PDS to be able to deliver those services out to the marketplace as well.
Cool, good stuff.
Over to you, Ian.
Thank you very much. So, good morning. My dulcet tones led us into the webinar, but I'll introduce myself formally. So my name's Ian Stretton. I've been at Reusable for longer than I care to remember, 10 years now. I've had different roles within Reusable, but my role at the moment is as a cloud transformation director. So basically I'm targeted and supporting the ATU, our account team unit, sorry, to connect up with you as our clients to really try to understand how our offerings and our engagements can help you to develop your Microsoft solutions. So whether that's developing into the cloud, whether that's continuing with some on-premise services, a mishmash of both in a hybrid environment. But where Caroline was talking at the a few minutes ago about our sort of three kind of main propositions around cloud transformation, business transformation and digital transformation, my ownership is of that cloud transformation element. So really just trying to help customers understand how they can make the most of things like Azure and Microsoft 365 or the Office 365 sort of suite. So that's me. Today I'm going to bore you a little bit with talking about the Cloud Centre of Excellence. So trying to help you to, maybe if this is a phrase or some terminology that you've heard being banded around in articles and stuff that are out on the web at the moment. It's been around for a while, or a Centre of Excellence has been around for a while, but it's just trying to maybe help you to understand what that is and how that can help and shape your internal IT teams. So without further ado, let's kind of crack on with that journey. So what I wanted to try to do with this slide is, I think, try to get you thinking around the developments that have happened with a sort of data center and thinking about, you know, digital services and how that's all developed over the years. So, you know, when I think about when I first started in IT, you know, one of the roles I had was actually as I used to call myself a backup or a tape jockey. So I used to be responsible for sort of changing physical tapes in a backup solution, taking those tapes, putting them in a vault somewhere, giving some of those tapes out to a courier who then used to go and ship them out to a different site somewhere else. So they were classed as being off-site backups, and it was all a very physical environment, sort of back in the day, if you like, and you had servers with an operating system, and then the applications would run on the top of those. And when you had a new application, you generally had to spec out and go and get yourself a new server for that to run on. And then obviously there's the management, there's the connectivity to that from your network, there's the physical racking and stacking, the cooling of those environments. Now, I know clearly some of that still exists. It's moved on, I think, obviously quite a lot in the later few years. So now you're looking at this more virtual environment where you've got maybe slightly less servers, but maybe they're more powerful, and they're running a virtualization layer that's allowing you to run multiple sort of operating systems and multiple servers within them. Again, I'm not teaching you anything here that you're not already aware of. If I think about, just going back to that backup analogy, I think those sorts of things have obviously moved on. So they're now doing things like virtual backups to disk. And then you're shipping that data maybe off to somewhere else and copying that maybe even up to the cloud or off to another data center. And when I think about maybe doing things like recovery, you're recovering sort of virtual environments and those sorts of things. So what I suppose I'm trying to allude to here is obviously there's a management shift. There's a process shift as to how you look after those environments. Of not just the environments have changed, but how you manage those and how you look after them has changed over time and over the years. And now we're kind of in this shift where cloud is very much the norm now, and people are moving services to the cloud, and whether that's physical service, whether that's moving applications and services to the cloud, whether that's again using the backup analogy, moving backups to the cloud, or actually when you think about cloud technology, if you're moving those services to the cloud, it's backup is now a commodity. The backup is part of the service that you're buying. So it's now if you're buying a software as a service, the high availability and the backup and the data retention of that service is included in the cost of whatever it is you pay per user per month or whatever. So again, with this, we're in this shift again of how your sort of IT management and how you sort of your organization can utilize those services, but more importantly how it needs to sort of manage and look after those services. It's a much different world now. So thinking about the Centre of Excellence. So I thought I'd try to talk about on this slide is first of all what it isn't, and then I'll talk about sort of what it is. So what it certainly isn't as a cloud Centre of Excellence is it's not an application, it's not a product, it's not a service, if you think about it like that. So it's not something you can go click a button, install it, and it will magically you'll all of a sudden have a cloud Centre of Excellence. So it isn't that. It's not a place that you go to. So thinking of a centre, like a gym or a fitness centre, it's not somewhere you go and learn some stuff. It's not just Azure as well, just to throw it into the mix. Obviously, as Caroline said, we're very much a Microsoft partner. Yes, Microsoft are very much on this kind of Centre of Excellence journey and path as well, and they talk about it quite a lot. But it isn't just Microsoft, and it isn't just Azure. There's other services that will also recommend you use or you deploy a Centre of Excellence. So obviously we'll mention them, Google, AWS, and obviously other third-party services that are out there. There isn't a one-size-fits-all. So, again, as I'll come on to in a second, there isn't, while there's recommendations as to how you should do it, this isn't just something that is purely for big IT departments or big multinational organizations to deploy. This can be, one or two people in an IT department potentially looking after it with some processes and some ways of doing things, and maybe bringing in third-party people to manage and help to support an IT environment. A Centre of Excellence can provide a way of and a method of how those people can interact with each other, and how, as I say, even a small IT team can utilize services outside of their own organization as well, but still be managed as part of this sort of Centre of Excellence mentality or methodology. So what it is. So it is about people. All right. It is definitely about how people will interact with each other, their roles, their responsibilities within a team and within maybe individual teams, which I'll come on to and show you how what I mean by those, but also how those teams then interact and how the shift of data, if you like, between those teams happen. That is very much what the a cloud center of excellence is about. So therefore, it's a creation of a team across different service roles that are very much empowered to define standards for a police force in this instance, which is to sort of achieve a common goal. So what I'm trying to say there is that, you know, it's very much about, as I say, working out what it is you're trying to achieve as an organization, and then defining certain roles within the IT and outside of that. So where you need support from things like your procurement teams, your governance and your management teams, your security teams. It's bringing all of that together into a virtual team that can then react and make decisions and be empowered to make those decisions, and then obviously actions that come out of that. It is potentially about delegating control of cloud services across the organization as well. So again, you know, if you think about, you know, the cloud is a commodity-based service, it's very easy to sort of get into, it's very easy to then delegate resources across an organization. So again, you know, thinking about IT teams in particular, you know, do you need to continue to do certain functions? You know, if you had an opportunity to give particular areas out to other people or other teams within an organization, how could you do that? Very much easily with the cloud, but how would you then govern that? And that's what this Centre of Excellence is designed to help with. It is the development of design patterns, automation processes, governance and tooling to manage those cloud services. So it's the definition of, say, some of those tools and techniques, those design patterns, to then provide the standards for other people to use. And as I said, there isn't a one size fits all. There is a lot of guidance out there. So when I was sort of doing a bit of research to develop this presentation, you know, there is a ton of research and there's a ton of opinion on how a centre of excellence, well, how it can benefit an organisation, but also how to actually get it set up and kind of what it would look like. So what I would say is very much do your research with that. And clearly, you know, we here at Reusable, we've got an opinion on how that should be done and how we can maybe even help you to get something implemented. So please feel free to connect with us about it. But it is very much a shift away from that sort of traditional IT unit, and by doing that, you know, you're going to get the benefits of also using the cloud as well. So this, I think, is also a really good way to, I suppose, try to represent as what some of the achievements, if you like, of a cloud centre of excellence would look like. So if you think of this scenario here where we've got a road layout, traditionally the bit on the left hand side is enforce and control. So that's kind of, I guess, your traditional IT team. It's the IT team that kind of look after things that are more in your own data centers, and you have that kind of, you know, you throw your arms around it, if you like. It's your control. It's the IT team's responsibility to look after things. So therefore, it's very much that kind of theory, I suppose, if you like, of the traffic lights, where, you know, something will happen if IT allow it to happen. And clearly it won't happen if IT don't allow it to happen. But of course, what that brings with it is sometimes the lack of speed, sometimes, I suppose, or understanding as to what the organisation and what the business is, what the force in this instance is trying to achieve. So it can, while it's not wrong, don't get it, you know, there's nobody saying that that's a wrong way to do things. But what it can do is it can provide that element of lack of flexibility and fluidness that sometimes an organisation or a police force might need. So you compare that to the sort of left-hand side, which is the enable and support. So with the implementation of a centre of excellence, the theory or the sort of idea behind the centre of excellence is to try to look to delegate some of that responsibility of that more central IT team across multiple teams, and even across teams that are outside of IT, to sort of say, well, here you go, here's not always the keys to the kingdom, but here's an ability to do this piece of work. or here you can do that. You know, this is something you keep asking us to do. Well, now here's an option. You can do that yourself. All under control, all still governed, all within in a way that means that it's not going to, you know, break anything if anything goes wrong. But it's starting to delegate out what some of that looks like. So again, by what we're trying to do there is you think about the roundabout. You know, we've defined the standard by having a roundabout in the middle. We're telling everybody that you've got to go to the left. And I know not everybody does that on the roads these days. Some people obviously go to the right and it causes accidents. But anyway, so you go round to the left and everybody follows it in the same way. And assuming that happens, then, you know, nothing should break, and you know, the governance is already in place and enables that fluidness and that freedom for allowing that speed of reaction. So if somebody needs something, they can actually make it happen and get on with it, kind of thing. So in terms of an objective for a cloud center of excellence, now what I would say before I sort of start reading through some of these, as you can probably read them on the screen as well yourselves, but what I want you to try to maybe think about is, with your objectives, this is very much something that, you know, it's one of the first things in when you start standing up a center of excellence needs to be is the definition of what is the objective of your cloud center of excellence. So what is it that you're trying to get your center of excellence to do? What support does it need to give your organization? So these that are on the screen here are just some ideas, and again, some things that we've worked with other customers, and obviously some of the research that I've been doing have kind of come up with. So things like driving cloud-enabled transformation across the force, helping stakeholders, excuse me, to think of the possibilities that are enabled by the cloud. So really just, and I think this kind of comes on to one down the bottom left there, which is also around raising the level of knowledge of cloud technology across the force. So not just raising the technology knowledge, the knowledge of the technology within the IT team, but taking that outside of the IT team as well to really get, you know, the rest of the force excited about it and try to get them to understand how they can utilize some of the services themselves and then gain the benefit from that, rather than having to, as I say, necessarily rely on that sort of IT team all the time to, you know, be the font of all knowledge. So by doing that, you know, that's really going to help, say, that the organization to shift and really to think about empowering people's own visions as to what they can use the cloud for. The one in the middle left there is around creating reusable templates. So again, what you tend to find with cloud technologies, and even I suppose when you think about, you know, technologies that you do in your own data centers, maybe at the moment with the virtualization, what you'll tend to have is some gold standards, or, you know, especially for like an operating system build, for example, you know, don't throw any of that stuff away, but make sure it's reusable and convert it, if you like, so it's cloudable, and you can reuse some of that knowledge in the cloud. And then as you start to learn more about the cloud, and you start to learn more about how some of the templates that have been defined maybe outside of your organization, maybe defined by Microsoft, by AWS, by third-party application vendors that have said, okay, yeah, we've deployed our solution on Azure, and kind of this is what it looks like, this is what we'd recommend, here's a template for you. So it's kind of looking at those sort of templates as that center of excellence, and making sure that the organization is using them properly and effectively, so that you're not essentially reinventing the wheel, and therefore you can really move quickly with those solutions as well. It is, again, an objective of, well, I think it should be an objective of the Centre of Excellence to create collaboration policies across the forces teams. So again, like I say, across finance, you know, so if you think of the traditional way that IT is purchased, you know, you buy a server and you then sweat it for 5 years, use it for as much and as long as you can. You may upgrade some of the disks, the memory, etc. But ultimately, you're trying to buy it, keep it, and run it for as long as you can. Well, the cloud is going to be a different way of purchasing those services now. So it's very much on a pay-as-you-go model. I think about a little bit about like electricity. So back in the day, you know, there were power stations that were attributed to factories, and they used to generate their own electricity, and that's how they could power their factory. Well, these days, obviously, that doesn't happen. There's big, you know, national centres where they create the electricity, and then we just plug a thing in and we pay somebody for it. that's very much the same theory of cloud services. You're paying somebody for a service, so the procurement model needs to change, and the understanding of how to purchase those and the governance around purchasing those needs to change as well. So you need to create those policies across the force to really get them to understand how to use cloud to the best of everybody's ability. Talking about cost, of course, there, so it's also making sure that the functional costs are relative to the cloud platform, so making sure that you've got an alignment with the operational procedures. So in other words, how much have you got to be able to spend to then be against, you know, what services are needed to need to be provided, what uptime needs to be provided, availability, etc. And it's really trying to then also use the governance and the reporting tools that are very much baked into pretty much everything cloud these days as well, just to understand how those tools can then help you with some of that reporting, some of that data analysis, which I'll come on to later in the slides, to really understand that financial element and the financial risk, I suppose, to moving into the cloud, and therefore to mitigate those risks and to help to think about different ways of doing things to basically make sure you get the most bang for your buck. Touched on there as well, obviously making sure that automation is key as well, you know, so where you can automate a service, where you can use templates to basically build from and use what you've done in previously, just make sure that that's baked in across anything that anybody is doing so that it can be repeated. So you generally find if you do something once, and another team looks at it and goes, we could do with one of those, or we need that SQL environment, the same as you've got for this service. Right, well, okay, well, we'll build it again, but we'll build it from the scripts that were created when we did it the first time around. So now, instead of it taking 2 or 3 days to build something, it now takes us 3 hours as opposed to 3 days. So it's really, again, the Cloud Center of Excellence is trying to gather all of that goodness and all of that good automation, making sure that people are automating in the first place as they're building stuff, but then gathering all of that into maybe a central repository so that everybody else can then benefit from the automation that's done as well. I'll just take a sip of water. Okay, so what I then tried to think about is, well, this all sounds, well, I'm hoping you're thinking it's all sounding really good. It kind of, yeah, okay, it's given a bit of a vision of the future. But how do we get there? What does it look like at the moment? And how do we get our teams to sort of morph and change into those roles? So what I think I'm generally finding, and as Caroline says, we're working with most of the police forces now in the UK to do deployment of things like Azure landing zones. So that's the kind of start, I suppose, of the journey. You're kind of building that sort of virtual data center ready for services to move into. And what I'm seeing is that generally you've got, whether it's individuals, and it generally has been individuals that have been picked from a central IT team at the moment to then have a bit more responsibility for some cloud services. Or you could argue it's a few people, and therefore you've got like a cloud adoption team. And those are the sorts of, like, say, those are the teams of people that we're probably, I suppose, working with. We're showing them how to build that landing zone. We're showing them what the capabilities of those landing zones are. So I suppose most organizations, most police forces, they've got that cloud adoption team. And that's been created, like I say, from your sort of central IT. It's people that are maybe used to looking after servers at the moment, and they've said, right, okay, I need to learn about the cloud now. And that cloud adoption team has been created. Conversely to that, there is also then, or what I'm seeing is there's a team of people that are just challenging that and just saying, well, okay, that's great. We're deploying these services. Can we make sure it's cost effective, please? Can we make sure it's secure, please? Can we make sure that you know, the connectivity is available across all these sites, please? So there's the governance side and the challenge side to that as well. So it just kind of, I suppose, it creates a balance between, as I say, from very quickly moving to also the governance team helps to reduce the risks by just trying to think about all the problems or blockers that may exist in a cloud implementation. So for just, oh no, wrong way, wrong button. go forward as opposed to backwards. So if you think about sort of what those adoption teams do, so those teams do, sorry. So the adoption team is accountable for technical solutions, business alignment, project management, and the operations of the solutions that are adopted. So basically the deployment of an Azure landing zone is generally done by the adoption team, and then continually then managed by that team as well. The governance team are there to sort of balance that adoption team. As I say, they're looking to look at making sure that they've got the best bang for the buck, make sure it's the cheapest way potentially, I suppose, of doing the things, or it's the most highly available, or whatever the remit is of whatever that particular solution is to be. But they're making sure that it's maturing the platform, as it says there. They are accountable for maturing the platform as it develops and as more services, I suppose, are looked to move on to that. So that's generally, and I'm hoping you're kind of nodding your heads there in the background thinking, yeah, okay, those, I can see where some of those roles and who those are in those roles at the moment within our current team. And generally, like I say, that's how people would start. What we're then tending to find is that, or what we're hoping is that actually the move and the shift to say, right, we've got the cloud, we want to adopt more of it, and we need to do it a lot faster now. So generally what happens is you find that more cloud adoption teams spin up. So you'll find that projects start to get spun up to say, right, okay, we've done the basic, right, now we've got 3 or 4 different projects or 3 or 4 different solutions that now need to be run or migrated or innovated and built new in the cloud. So more adoption teams spin up. On the other side to that, you get your cloud governance team who are kind of thinking, whoa, hang on a second, I'm trying to make sure that this is going in correctly and that we're looking at the costs, etc. So what then happens normally is the wider sort of central IT team start to then be brought in or be told, let me rephrase, they're told that we need to bring you in because, you know, the governance team can't just do this on their own, or the governance individual can't just do this on their own. So we need to bring in more support for that to kind of support with these cloud adoption projects. So you'll find that while it's one team, i.e. the central IT team that gets introduced, they'll then have to take on multiple functions like IT operations, IT administration. And of course, they're doing all of this for the cloud, or trying to learn all of this for the cloud at the same time as, I guess, probably looking after their internal environments. So while the adoption will scale, this and while you've probably got, especially within the police force, you're going to have heavy compliance. So you've got to make sure that it's compliant, it's secure at the same time as well. Now, what we tend to find with that, again, there's nothing wrong with any of this, by the way. It's generally what happens. But I think if I to say my next sentence, which is what generally then happens, is that unless those central IT teams are coming with the strong growth mindset, I call it. So in other words, they're prepared to learn, they already know that they're going to have to manage the cloud. Unless they're coming with that view, you will find generally that the central IT team will bring with them a mentality of, you know, the cloud is also essentially just an extension of our on-premise systems. So what we'll do is we'll manage it and we'll govern it and we'll look after it in the same way that our on-premises IT it gets looked after. And again, while some of that will work, it won't actually use all the benefits, and it won't allow that to expand and develop really quickly. And essentially, what you'll just have is a cloud version of your on-premise environment, which is, again, there's no point in doing that. You're not going to gain any benefits. So we have seen, not necessarily in police forces, because I think a lot of you are sort of really at the start of some of that journey. I know you've moved, lots of you have moved Office 365 or to Office 365 in particular, and there's a lot of learning that's happened around that. But I'm thinking of core kind of systems moving to the cloud. We have seen other organizations that have spent many months and even years trying to really align with their on-premises, and that just basically creates negative results. So what we are, I suppose, trying to suggest, and what we're going to recommend, and again, this is a model that Microsoft are promoting, is sort of this model here. So it's more of a mature kind of cloud focused model. So if I just talk you through maybe what each of the responsibilities of each of these teams and areas that I've got on this slide, what we're seeing here is on your left hand side, you've got a cloud strategy team. So this team is designed to drive critical priorities and discovery efforts in the cloud adoption. So they may also, I'm going to read some of this because I wrote this and it's easier for me to read it than make it up on the fly. So, but they may also change business processes, the execution of the operations, customer interactions, and even product development. The primary focus of the cloud strategy team is to validate the maintenance and alignment between the business priorities and the cloud adoption efforts. So they are the sort of taking what the business or forces priorities are and translating that into projects and pieces of work for the cloud adoption team to then take on. The cloud adoption team then is a nucleus of cloud adoption members. So they may have different skills and they should have different skills as well to sort of see how they can how solutions can develop. But that team really should drive those technical changes. They should enable the adoption again across the organization. So again, it's maybe about going out and doing a bit of training for not just the IT team, but for other parts of the organization as well. And as I say, they should be doing that kind of review of the business requirements and then matching that up to, okay, what does that solution potentially then look like? So I guess your sort of traditional kind of cloud architect or enterprise architect kind of element, I suppose, is really where that cloud adoption comes in. Then in the middle there, we've got cloud operations. So if you think about the duties of this team, so this is really about if you think, I suppose, about the traditional sort of keeping the lights on, so this is about making sure that the maximum workload and the minimum business interruptions is provided by the cloud. So it's determining, which workloads are critical, what the impact of making any changes to the solutions would be. Also, it's generally this team that are responsible for things like the performance of the solution and the services, but also the monitoring and the cost analysis as well. So I'll come on to cost in a little bit because actually that should be responsible for everybody. But in terms of being accountable, you generally find the cloud operations team are the people who will ensure that it's meeting budgets, or if something is going over budget, then they would report on that to the relevant people to say, well, hang on a second, you're costing too much with your thing. So that cloud operations team are, like I say, generally the people that will do that sort of more day-to-day looking after the cloud all up and the cloud services all up. Moving into the Centre of Excellence now, so you can kind of see, whereas on the previous slide I had the blue sort of central IT team, that was a single team and they had different functions. What we're saying here is that there isn't a Cloud Centre of Excellence team as such. It's not a department, it's not a thing, it's a virtual team that is then made up by these sub teams of cloud governance, cloud platform, cloud automation and cloud security. So by them coming in and then meeting on a regular basis or using policies to communicate with each other on a regular basis, each of these teams will provide their own separate function. So the governance, as we kind of touched on, so the cloud governance team's mission is to balance the competing forces of transformation versus risk. Additionally, they're making sure that the migration teams and the cloud adoption teams are, not going off and thinking about solutions that are too expensive, and that they're well architected, and that they're meeting, the requirements, I suppose, of the organisation in terms of compliancy and governance from that perspective. The cloud platform team, so their duties here are very much around the development of that cloud platform, the development of those sort of landing zones, so continually improving and seeking new servers. So if you think about so some people will generally say, well, isn't that very similar to cloud operations? And yes, there is a synergy obviously between the two. I think the difference for me between operations is more about keeping things going. The cloud platform is about having a look at how things are going, and then more focused on research of new services and further improvements and how can we make that better. So they're very much focused on improvement rather than sort of keeping the norm, shall we say. And then you've got your automation team. So the primary duty of that team is very much to, as I say, make sure that automation is baked into everything that is done, make sure that you know, scripts are created and templates are created across whether it's the adoption team that are creating that or any of the other teams, that they are understood, known, and then developed into almost like a catalogue of services that can then be made available to the rest of the organization. So it's taking that and developing that in the first place. It's also potentially being used for this team would be used to create those templates in the first place as well. So again, here's a service. We know we've got to deploy 10 of these over the next 12 months. Can we develop a script, if you like, that was going to do it? So you know, the first one might be a little bit manual, but once we've done that, the following 9, we can click a button and it's done. So if you think of the cloud automation team, they're very much responsible. I kind of call it a bit like the solutions catalog. So they would be very much responsible for that area. And then finally on here, we've got the security. So clearly that's very much focused on both the human element of security, but also the cybersecurity elements as well. So anything that is being put in, it's you know, making sure it's secure, making sure that the monitoring of those environments are up to standard and up to scratch. So thinking about your traditional security operations center, that is generally they would be that cloud security. They will be part of that cloud security team as well. So hopefully that kind of makes sense. And I think, no, I'll come on to it in a second, actually. I'll come back to that. So when you think about how you might set up a team and how you go through those different stages, so I think, you know, clearly we're here to help, and we'd love to help you to get through that. But what we'd normally recommend is that you start off by defining a set of business outcomes. So what is it that the Centre of Excellence is trying to achieve? We're going to bring all these people together as this virtual team, but what's the objectives of that virtual team? As I alluded to before, there were some ideas that I've kind of thrown out there. Please feel free to use those, but you need to come up with your own objectives as well. You should really assess the pain points that you've currently got. So it could be that the IT service that you've currently got is absolutely fine. You don't need to change it at all. If that's the case, cool, brilliant, keep going with it. But you'll generally find that as you move towards more cloud enabled and cloud provided services, that actually that traditional sort of IT isn't going to just cut the mustard. There will be some pains, there will be some speed and agility and stability issues that you're going to have to think about. So let's assess what those are at the beginning, and then make sure that we are either sort of processing and designing processes that are kind of ruling those out in whatever the new Centre of Excellence would be. Obviously, you need to define what your organisation Centre of Excellence is, and moving on to the next one, define who those stakeholders would be. So it's kind of like who would be part of it, who would be best to run it, what power and permissions, if you like, do those people need and do those individuals need, and you know, in the world of I know police forces are very, very structured as how they go through sign off and processes, and obviously there's outside agencies that potentially need to come in and sign off solutions as well. But it's just trying to understand how does that work within your future Centre of Excellence, and what considerations need to be made. You know, who can make decisions, and should the Centre of Excellence be able to make decisions to a certain level? And then, okay, if it's above that level, right, who do we then need to go to? Who needs to provide that sign off, and what documentation potentially needs to be provided? So yeah, again, define the initial team. So again, this is, and I'll talk about this again in a few slides time, but this is very much a journey. You aren't going to do this overnight. The Centre of Excellence doesn't appear overnight. You may have the titles and you may have the roles in place and all that kind of good stuff, but actually for it to come in and mature and to be successful will take time. It will take a number of iterations and a number of projects for it to be run through, for it to and a period of time for the kind of day-to-day management for all of that to actually be effective. So, you know, think about what the initial teams might need to look like, and then what the end game should potentially look like, with a view that that may also change as well, depending on changes in the world as well. As we know with COVID, you know, that just changed the whole thing anyway. Provide the CCOT team with the CCOE even team with the appropriate authority. So make sure that they have the ability to make those decisions, to put the governance in place, and to, as I say, set those abilities to make decisions effectively. Let the team establish how the adoption. So let the Centre of Excellence team define how the cloud technology should be adopted across the organisation. There's very much a case here of you've got to create a skill plan as well. So understanding, you know, what does the organisation already know about cloud, and what training might need to be provided, and then go and get it. Right. So it's one thing saying, yeah, you're going to do this cloud stuff. It's actually another thing saying, here's a bit of training. Now you're going to do that cloud stuff. So actually creating skills readiness plans for anybody that's going to be involved is key as well to making it successful. And as I touched on, you know, it does take time to embed. So it's very, in my opinion, it's very much key to make sure that you're starting early. So, you know, don't wait. Don't think, oh, we've only got a landing zone at the moment, so we don't really need all this stuff. No, actually start now and think about how that's going to change and morph over the next sort of 12 to 18 months as you get more and more services provided by the cloud. For me, data is very much key to making the decisions. So once you're, and I know you'll be doing this already, so you're gathering information about the performance, the usage, the availability, costs of services that you're providing at the moment with maybe internal data centers. And I think if you're thinking about then obviously moving to the cloud, gathering those statistics and then reviewing those as part of the Cloud Centre of Excellence to then make educated decisions to say, well, these services clearly are either struggling because they haven't got enough power, they haven't got enough resource, so they are key, or they are ripe, shall we say, for moving to the cloud. So by collecting all of this data now, which you probably already will be, but using that data to help you to make those decisions is critical, really. Know what your applications do and how your services act and perform. Clearly, again, goes back into things like performance, cost of service. You know, how many people are using services? It could be that, you know, there's one or two people that continue to use a service. Well, okay, just looking at that and saying, well, could that be done by a software as a service solution? Could that be done in Office 365 nowadays? It could be that there's a service then that you don't even need to move. You can just decommission it. Once you've moved to the cloud, then we've got analyze what makes sense to the move to the cloud. So I kind of touched on that as you monitor your performance. How is the service performing once it's in the cloud? So once you've done your move, doesn't mean to say you should stop monitoring. And I think what you'll find again when you do move to the cloud, the amount of statistics, the amount of information that then becomes available, the amount of tools as well that you'll then have at your disposal, will mean that analysing how the service is performing once it's on the cloud and giving you suggestions as to how you can improve that, a lot of that is already baked into cloud services, especially on Azure. So things like your cost analysis tools and your monitoring tools and your security tools, they will all help with the review as to how the solution is performing and give you the answers, really, or give you the suggestions as to, can we do something better? Could we do something cheaper with different types of resources, again, that are available from the cloud? And for me, that then feeds into, as part of, I touched on this before, but as part of a Centre of Excellence, the whole organisation needs to be very much cost conscious. So we think about this kind of reiterative circle. You're constantly going around the loop, making sure that in terms of visibility, management groups and resource groups that house the teams, they need to be able to view and see what's going on. They need to be able to look at the tools. They need to be able to look at the performance statistics that are going on. then you're going to work out sort of, or you've got this accountability. So they'll then go, right, okay, hang on a second, we can see this solution is set up in this particular way, and it's this team or these groups of people that set that solution up. Let's just check with them. Okay, why did you set it up that way? Is there a reason it needs to stay that way? So that's where that accountability kind of comes in. So that check and balance. And eventually you'll move around into the optimization and say, well, actually, if we do it this way instead, you probably still get the same performance, if not better, but you can do it cheaper. Oh, okay, well, yes, we'll do that then. And that constant sort of optimization and cost conscious organization starts to then develop. And as I said previously, your cloud operations team are generally going to be the people who are accountable. They're generally going to be the people who report on those sorts of elements as a bottom line cost. But that doesn't mean to say that, you know, when you're thinking about the cloud strategy, when you're looking at the projects and the adoption of services into the cloud, when you're, you know, going through each of the different teams, you know, in terms of the governance and the platform development, etc., it's everybody has always got to have that cost consciousness at the back of their minds, thinking, could I do this better? Could this be done more streamlined? Could we use more cost-effective services to still deliver the same end games? And then I suppose finally, in terms of hopefully I've kind of given you planted a seed as to why a centre of excellence is useful and kind of so good. What I've got here is just a few examples as to maybe some situations where we've kind of come across where having a centre of excellence may have helped or has helped. So I'll only pick one. Rather than going through all of these on the slide, but you can read through them yourself. So thinking about a police force that maybe needs a digital forensic service, and maybe what traditionally has happened is there's obviously the design piece of work, the architecture teams maybe come up with the solution architecture and think about, you know, okay, they then bring in IT and they bring in the networking teams, they bring in the security teams. Okay, you know, here's what we need. Can we build this solution, please? And the first question I would normally ask is, well, how big does it need to be? Right, well, I'm not sure because it could grow over the next 3 years. So let's buy servers that are probably bigger than we need from day one, but we might need them in 3 years' time. So let's build them big, and then we'll grow into it, kind of thing. Okay, great. So you go off, you buy that. It can take weeks potentially to go and get the kit if it's new kit that needs to be done. And that can take a lot of time to go around the houses of deciding what that solution needs to be and how that solution needs to be implemented. And at this time, you still haven't actually tested it to make sure it's something that you really want. Flip to the Centre of Excellence. And what we can do here is start to build by using reference architectures to say, well, actually, we built something similar to that. So we've already built a SQL environment, and we know that it can handle these things. So actually, that bit's already done. That design for that's already done. Right, we'll use that. Then we've got blueprints maybe from third parties or from organizations that have already done this previously. And they go, right, well, here you go. This is what we'd recommend. So you kind of start to piece all that together. And you go, right, well, okay, we've got scripts, we've got the blueprints, let's just deploy, build it small to start off with, because again, with the cloud, we know that we can expand. So we'll build it small, and then, right, does that work? Yes, it does. Great. Right, now we can improve. Budget is, now we can improve the service, we can increase it and get more people onto it, and we can do that with the expansion into the cloud or using the cloud. And then what we can also do all the way through that engagement is the Centre of Excellence is constantly reviewing the budget, so that if there is at any point a risk that it's going to kind of go over a budget or it's getting too much out of control, the Centre of Excellence can kind of go, whoa, hang on a sec, or the governance team maybe can go, well, hang on a second, that's going out of control. We need to either rein that back, or you might need to drop something out of the solution because it's either not designed correctly or we don't need that high availability for now. Let's rein that back in and we can do something different. But with that Centre of Excellence as a joint team making those decisions with together, you should find that actually, as I say, by delegating that, you'll get a much quicker response with the ability to move faster and be more agile as that solution develops. So in terms of Reusable's offerings, what can we do to help? So this is what we call a cloud platform and our client journey. So we've obviously developed our engagements to help an organization to go from a cloud strategy, helping with things like the cloud adoption and the cloud assessments and working out, services can move, all the way through to a cloud support. Sorry, we've got the Centre of Excellence in the middle, so we can help you to get that stood up. And then we've got our cloud support on the far right as well. So if it's a service that you think actually things like cloud operations, you know, maybe we want to give that out to a third party, that's absolutely where Reusable can help. And if I just flick through past this one, so this is again a security and identity journey that we've got as well. But if I flick to just back to that mature model that we that I talked about before, what I've tried to do there is kind of map from the slide that I just had previously our visual engagements as to where we think, you know, if you were to come along and say, well, we want to do some of that cloud strategy bit or that cloud operations bit, could you just do that for us? This is how our sort of offerings lay over and on top of that mature model to help you to get to that end game, that end mature model. So just a couple of key points and key takeaways then for me. So Cloud Centre of Excellence is very much about people. It's not a thing, as I say, it's not a button that you push and go, we've got one now. It's very much about people. It will be a journey that you will start on and then work through. It isn't something you can, like I say, just have in 5 minutes. It will take a little bit of time to come through. It will help your force, to accelerate the use of the cloud. So as I've been sort of alluding to all the way, it's about communication of teams and making the most of the cloud services. So education of what the cloud can provide, which means that if everybody knows roughly what it can do, then you've got half a chance to get everybody's thoughts into how it can be a better service for you as well. So it's definitely going to help you to use those services better. You do need very much to embrace a culture of change. So, you know, especially with the cloud, you know, nothing necessarily stays the same. There's always something new that's going to come along. There's generally something that's going to come along that's probably cheaper and probably better as services develop. So it's making sure that you're constantly aware of that and that you're constantly looking at change. It's not something you buy, keep it for 3 years anymore and sweat the asset. Cloud is very much a case of it's here, it's in the now. What's coming next? Can we use that better? And that constant iteration. You do need to empower the Centre of Excellence, so they do need to have some authority to make the decisions. Otherwise, you know, it becomes a toothless exercise. As I touched on, data is key. So make sure you're collecting, you're analysing your data, and then using that data to make decisions, because that will help and to back up anything you're deciding on, anything you're thinking of doing. And then finally, of course, we can help with pretty much the whole journey. So please do get in touch with us. If I've confused you with all of that stuff, then I'm more than happy to talk to you separately and individually to help to explain in a lot more detail where we can help across the deployment of your Centre of Excellence. And a big sigh. So that now brings us, if I can get to the last slide. Come on, slide. Why isn't that moving? Come on. There we go. So we're now on to that final slide, Caroline. So just to say thank you for joining, and there's an offer that we've got for you as well.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. So, so as Ian said, there was probably a lot of information in there. You know, obviously, please feel free to reach out to us. Listen back to the recording, which we will be issuing out, and I can send you the link through once that's all uploaded onto our social media channels. But you know, as Ian said, we are offering a free consultancy session to go through this on a one-to-one basis or a one-to-four basis. So we can help you to understand in a bit more detail what this means for your organisation, and also, you know, maybe start to work through those plans with you to see how you can start your adoption of a Cloud Centre of Excellence. Contact details are on the right hand side of the slide, or you can reach out to me direct. I'm Caroline S at reusable.com, or you can use our general enquiries at reusable.com as well. But on that note, I'm conscious it's come to 11 o'clock. If anybody does have any questions, if you can post them into the chat window.
Yeah, well, so it's 11 o'clock, top of the shop. So thank you for joining. We'll hang around for a few minutes just to see if there is anybody that